So, I remember years ago doing a series on Revelation called God Wins, and it was during the height of the book series and the movie series Left Behind. And that's a very commonly held belief that there's the Christians are going to be raptured before the tribulation and the second coming, and we're not going to have to experience any of that. And what I shared in this series was that historically there are a couple of other views that very Orthodox Bible-believing Christians also believe. One would be an amillennial view where Nero is the Antichrist and we're living in a figurative millennial period now. Others would believe, and probably my own personal belief, is that we may experience some of the tribulation. I hope not, but there's some room in the Bible for that interpretation. It's been interesting, Todd. We agree so much on so many things and are so consistent with each other, especially about the main things. But we have some different views, and this would be one of those areas because you hold more to a pre-tribulation view, which there's great biblical support for. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say all three of those views that we might have, either pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib, all are within Orthodoxy. There are scholars of all persuasions, and they study their whole lifetime, and they end up at different places. So we're okay with that. We're good with that.
Right.
I do believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, and I have a whole list of about 10 things as to why. The biggest one for me is that it's uncomfortable for us to even talk about Revelation in the sense of this is God's judgment on Israel's unbelief and their rebellion and the world's. And we like to really focus on grace and love and mercy because we need it so much, and we know how gracious Christ was to us to save us and how gracious he was that he would give his life for us. But that's one of the reasons that I believe we won't be here, because Christ has paid the penalty for my sin.
Hey, you know what? No question about it. I sure hope you're right. You very well may be, but in the end, are we ready today for whatever we're going to have to face? And certainly, God is God and we're not. And I think some of the truths that people say are crystal clear are not quite as clear as what they'd like to think they are. And this is one of those where there's just some room for different interpretation.
And that shouldn't undermine your faith at all.
Not at all.
The things that we need to know, God is crystal clear on, and he gives us the Holy Spirit to understand truth. And so I hope I get to say to you, when we're in heaven and we're not here for the tribulation, see, I told you. But I'm going to go. Well, I'm so glad. We'll be glad. I think the other thing, just a part of just Revelation, we don't look at just Revelation for the understanding.
Right.
This is one story starting in Genesis. So there's a list and lineage of who God is, his character, what he's doing. He's had this plan from the very beginning, and that's being played out. So part of our understanding of things like the tribulation, things like the kingdom, his return, those things were being talked about in the Old Testament.
Oh, John refers to the Old Testament numerous times in Revelation.
Over and over. Yeah. So I think about Daniel too.
Yeah.
So he was a prophet, and he saw very similar things to what John was saying. And he didn't have much of a better way to describe it than John did. But those things put together and the way that that's laid out, we can have some clarity. And I think the clarity for me is this. Christ is going to return, and he's going to take those who've placed their faith in him. And also, he does win in the end.
Yeah.
God does win.